Big City Greens is easily one of Disney Channel's best shows. Big City Greens is not just about the fun stories and colorful characters. This fan-favorite cartoon captivates audiences of all ages with its adventures and laughs. That's why, by popular demand, I'm going to tell you all about the 4th season of Big City Greens from start to end. In our first episode, Bill takes Cricket, Tilly, and Remy to the scrapyard, where Cricket cannot wait to introduce Remy to his friend Hector. The two of them encounter Lupita, Hector's younger sister, who was just a baby when Cricket last met her. They finally meet Hector, who's revealed to be a teenager, something that's slightly off-putting to Remy. The three head off to hang out. Tilly tells the boys that she's at the scrapyard because she's trying to find her future car, and does not think that the kludge will hold up in the years to come. She leaves Bill by himself to essentially look for any other leftover belongings that they'll need. Cricket and Remy are taken to Hector's hangout spot in an abandoned tram car, and find that it's been turned into a personal teen hangout. Cricket is confused by Hector's changing taste despite Remy pointing out the obvious. He finds a box full of their equipment they used when playing Junk Mountain, but Hector admits that he was gonna throw it out. Before they can do anything, Hector is visited by Sunday, his girlfriend, and his friends, and they leave a confused Cricket and Remy behind. Elsewhere, Tilly's trying to find the perfect car. She tries a sports vehicle, a hearse, and a hot dog car, but all her fantasies end with disastrous consequences. Tilly eventually comes to the conclusion that her best future vehicle is that of a tire, much to Bill's confusion. Cricket and Remy find Hector hanging out with other teens, and through quick thinking manage to drag Hector away from his friend. He politely plays Junk Mountain with the boys, but Cricket realizes that Hector belongs with his friends and says goodbye to him. Remy tells Cricket that just like the junk in the scrapyard, they'll always find new friends somewhere, and promises that he'll always be Cricket's friend. Lupita arrives asking if she can play with them, and Cricket hands Hector's old shield to her as the three continue playing on Junk Mountain. In the next episode, Cricket is playing with Phoenix and showing Remy the things that she's good at bringing back. Suddenly, Tilly comes out in a panic and reveals that Saxon is missing. As she cries, Phoenix remembers that Saxon was left behind at the house and decides to embark on an adventure to get him back. Melissa the goat and Brenda the cow both ask that they come along, but Phoenix politely turns them down. Cogburn the rooster criticizes Phoenix and accuses her of trying to claim the glory for herself. Meanwhile, in Big City, Gloria returns home from work and sees that Grandma Alice is pampering herself to go out and invites Gloria to join her, which she does so reluctantly. Phoenix sneaks aboard the train to Big City only to find that Melissa and Brenda have also managed to sneak aboard. Despite her warning them that they need to be sneaky, they're caught due to their ineptitude and thrown off the train. Phoenix decides to continue the journey on her own. Gloria and Alice go to the club and proceed to dance the night away. However, Gloria realizes that Alice is not acting like her usual grumpy and tough self and is instead trying to feel young. Through her observation, she comes to the realization that Alice misses her family and that her acting out is her way of trying to deal with it. She takes her home when she begins to cause a mess. Phoenix makes it to the house only for Cogburn to arrive and trap her, and threatens to destroy Saxon and blame it on her. She's rescued by Melissa and Brenda, who stop and capture Cogburn. Phoenix apologizes to her friends and thanks them for being helpful after all. Gloria and Alice return home and see the mess. Gloria then suggests using this as an excuse for Alice to go to the country with her family while she stays and looks after the house while she's gone. Alice and the animals arrive via taxi and return Saxon to a relieved Tilly. She thanks Phoenix for going and finding Saxon, and the family is happy to have Alice return to them. In the other episode, the Greens and Remy arrive at downtown Smallton, a shopping strip, and decide to drop by Patty's Diner, the Greens' usual eating spot in the country. As they all enter, they're greeted by the owner Patty, who's happy to see the Green, Tilly especially, as she makes her favorite blueberry pie. Grandma Alice is put off that Tilly considers Patty's blueberry pie her favorite and tries to talk her out of having it, but Patty says she'll bake a new pie. Bill is disgusted with having a liverwurst sandwich as his usual, but Cricket wants a usual too, and demands a meat witch to be it, despite Bill warning him that having a usual isn't as fun as he thinks, as they'll keep coming non-stop. Meanwhile, Remy stops by the gift shop to get something for Vasquez, but cannot find the right gift. As Tilly talks about how great Patty's pies are, Alice confronts Patty in the kitchen and challenges her to a bake-off to see who can make the best pie, which Patty casually accepts. Wanting the meat witch to be as usual, Cricket demands another one from the waiter Wayne. Bill warns Cricket about getting a usual, but Cricket is so determined that he insists that Wayne not write it down and have it to memory. Wayne panics and gives Cricket a carrot on a bun, so Cricket makes a song for him and he gets it this time. Patty and Alice finish baking, but when Alice tries Patty's pie, she concludes that it is the best pie she's ever tasted. Alice attempts to stop Patty from delivering her pie, but Tilly catches them. Just then, Remy, who decided to buy every souvenir, returns and trips, nearly crushing Patty's pie. Alice rescues it, but her pie is destroyed instead. Alice admits that she was was jealous and worried that Tilly would not want her to bake anything for her ever again, but Tilly tells her that she'll always be her grandmother and love her no matter what. As everyone digs into the pie, Cricket decides to give up on the meat witch to have some, but Alice tells him that he needs to finish it first, much to his shock. Bill quips at the fact Cricket disobeyed his warning from before, and he's now stuck with his usual, just like he did with the liverwurst sandwich. And the episode closes as Bill maniacally laughs over his son's misery. In the other episode, it is the crop season, and Bill has Cricket, Remy, and Tilly get ready by gathering the crops. Unfortunately, Nancy arrives to inform them that due to one of the local businesses scaring the native bunnies away, they are headed towards the nearest farm, which just so happens to be theirs. As the bunnies nearly decimate the farm, Nancy reveals that she's accrued help from their neighbors, specifically Patty, Wayne, Trey, Tracy, Hector, Sunday, Lupita, and Joe. Bill makes it known to Nancy that he does not approve of having help due to everyone's inexperience, with the exception of Joe, but goes along with it anyway at Nancy's insistence. Bill puts Patty and Grandma Alice on bunny catching duty, though Tilly sneaks off to prevent them from killing them, has Cricket and Remy clean the veggies, and everyone else to pick them, with the exception of Lupita, whom he benches. While Nancy goes to fix the carrot picker, Bill begins to have trouble having everyone else doing their job, including Joe, who is distracted by Lupita showing off her skills to him. As everyone begins to waste time, Patty and Alice are no closer to getting rid of the bunny. Tilly has captured them all and throws them back in the wild, but this causes them to multiply and cause even more damage to the farm. Bill gets mad at everyone before admitting that he's afraid of losing the farm again, but Nancy informs him that he needs to not burden himself so much. He decides to try something new, which in this case means having Nancy be in charge. Nancy pairs everyone up based on effectiveness, such as putting Tilly on bunny catching duty and Lupita on trailer fixing, before setting Sunday up to give everyone a boost with their music. Despite the rabbits nearly taking over, everyone manages to collect the harvest in time, and they deter the bunnies. Afterwards, Bill thanks Nancy for having his back, knowing that they can always count on one another. In the next episode, Remy and Grandma Alice's time on the farm has come to an end, and they're ready to return to Big City. While the rest of the Greens are saddened by this, Bill gets the idea to bring Cricket and Tilly along so that they can extend their goodbye. Nancy decides to stay on the farm, admitting that the only reason why she liked going to Big City was because they lived there. Upon arriving in Big City, Bill, Cricket, and Tilly are hit with deja vu, and Bill is revealed to still remember certain habits of the city. They stop by the farmer's market to sell their produce when they run into all their friends who happily buy them all and reminisce on their shenanigans. Alice and Remy are ready to head back to their respective homes, but Bill convinces them to stick around a little longer. Meanwhile, Vasquez has set up a welcome home party for Remy and happily awaits his return, though he is oblivious to the situation at hand. Back at the greenhouse, Gloria is waiting for Alice's return so that they can sign some papers from the notary public, Merv Stampington. He ends up arriving and reveals that he's only interested in finishing the job until 6 o'clock when he can finally retire. It quickly becomes apparent that Bill, Cricket, and Tilly are prolonging their goodbyes and start holding Alice and Remy against their will. Vasquez finally realizes something is wrong when Remy won't answer his text. He heads to the greenhouse where he recruits Gloria, who is also concerned for Alice's whereabouts, and they head out to look for them, with Merv getting dragged along. They find the truck and chase after them in a helicopter where, in typical Green fashion, they end up causing a lot of damage to the city. Vasquez finally launches a smoke bomb at them that causes them to end up back at the house. Vasquez reunites with Remy while Alice finally signs the notary, just in time for Merv to retire, and revealing that it was so Gloria could sell cheese. Bill, Cricket, and Tilly sadly depart. As the family drives back to the country, the truck runs out of gas exactly 80 miles from both Big City and Smallton. They call Nancy to come and help gas them up, and they admit that it felt wrong leaving the city as they missed all their friends and the environment. Nancy admits that she feels more at home in the country and suggests that they can move back to Big City while she stays on the farm in Smallton to look after it when they're away. And the two can go back and forth living in both their homes whenever they want. Bill, Cricket, and Tilly happily accept and head back to Big City. Cricket asks if this means they're city folk from the country or country folk from the city, but Bill tells them that they're just the Greens. In the final scene, at a cemetery outside of Big City, a gravedigger walks by a gravestone belonging to Chip Whistler and remarks to his dog that Chip was the biggest jerk who ever died. He explains that Chip had to be buried far away from Big City because he was banned from the town. As the gravedigger reminisces about the family that Chip used to torment, a hooded figure, unbeknownst to the gravedigger, appeared. The figure is revealed to be Chip Whistler, who faked his own death and is now plotting even bigger revenge on the Greens, promising that their troubles are only beginning. In the other episode, Bill, Nancy, Tilly, and Grandma Alice had just finished their chores. Bill, after working for so long, suggests that they go inside and have some of Nancy's strawberry cake. So they agree and go inside, but upon entering, they find the kitchen destroyed and the cake completely eaten. They immediately suspect Cricket, who claims innocence due to him being the only one in the house, but when the family continues to suspect him, Cricket invokes the sibling code, which indicates that Tilly support and defend Cricket regardless of the evidence. Tilly tells Cricket that if he's lying, that she could never forgive him and agrees to defend him in a mock trial. Tilly asks Nancy the last time she saw the cake, and she reveals that she saw it through the window at 11 o'clock, meaning between 11 and 11:20, Cricket could have easily eaten it. But Tilly points out that she only saw it from outside and therefore could not know the exact time. They find a sweat stain on one of their chairs, which Nancy believes is from Cricket, but Tilly points out that it could easily have come from Bill. As they celebrate a win, Cricket accidentally reveals that his arm is perfectly fine, having lied about the injury to get out of working. To make matters worse, they find strawberry icing on Cricket's arm, something he cannot recall the source to. Tilly is upset with Cricket, who bemoans his bad luck, adding that he could not even speak to Gabriella from his smart pad, intriguing Tilly. When she asks him why he didn't mention such before, he only responds it never happened, and he was about to call her when he got summoned downstairs. Realizing Cricket was telling the truth, Tilly comes back to continue her defense of Cricket and points out that while Cricket did indeed destroy the kitchen and sweat on the chair, the cake eating was not his fault. The destruction was from his prep time video chatting, as he gets nervous whenever he tries to talk to Gabriella. It is revealed that Cricket recorded his entire time prepping for 32 minutes between 11 and 11:20, thus proving that he did not eat the cake in that time. Nancy declares Cricket is innocent, and Cricket thanks Tilly for supporting sibling code as the Greens apologize for not believing Cricket, but wonder who actually took the cake. Upon seeing part of Cricket's video, which happened to have caught footage of the true thief taking the cake from outside, Nancy realizes who the cake thief really was, bringing the rest of the family to meet the new family member, Grandpa Nick. Taking place right after the events of the previous episode, Nancy's father, Nick Mulligan, has settled himself in the Greens' country home, much to Nancy's displeasure. While Bill and Grandma Alice are concerned with his presence, Cricket and Tilly are easily enamored with their grandfather, who is clearly on his last legs. Nick claims that he wanted to see his grandkids, and the adults reluctantly agree to let him see them, as Bill and Alice decide to head back to Big City for the time being. When Nancy insists that Nick go home, he reveals that his home was burned down, either by him, a loan shark, or one of his exes. With no other option, Nancy decides to find a place for him to stay, as well as a paying job. The group head into town, and Nancy makes a stop at Frank's place, who literally multitasks several jobs at once. Nancy asks that he can give Nick a job, but he insists that he has everything covered. He calls his brother in Tinyville, Hank, who also multitasks, albeit horribly, and agrees to let Nick work one of his jobs. Nick begins regaling tales to Cricket and Tilly, who are intrigued by his history, and they decide to venture further into Smallton with him. They eventually stop by an abandoned house where they proceed to break apart and are joined by a man named Dweezil, who gives them axes. Nancy leaves Frank's place only to find everyone gone and begins searching for them. Nancy finds the group in the company of Dweezil and becomes furious with Nick, demanding that he leave and never come back. They drop him off at the train station to Tinyville. As they leave, Cricket and Tilly reveal that they are well aware of how terrible Nick is, but that he genuinely cares about them and his family. Nancy has a change of heart and goes back to the train station, where it's revealed that Nick traded his ticket for a ferret that he already lost. Nancy agrees to let Nick live with her on the condition that he help with farm work. As Nick struggles to get used to his new life, he begins to tell the story of Rat-Faced Dave to Cricket and Tilly. In the next episode, the Greens are once again spending the day together by going out, this time to the Wax Museum. As soon as they enter, Greg, formerly Wholesome Greg, exits and falls down a manhole. He's greeted by a mysterious hooded figure, but quickly realizes that it's his former employer, Chip Whistler, whom everyone thought was dead. Chip reveals that as the helicopter was launched far away from Big City, he managed to escape using a parachute, though he still injured himself by crashing into a tree, hitting every branch, and landing in a thorn bush. He made his way to a diner where he caught the news reporting on the aftermath of the Elkins Street battle. Maria Media reports the wreckage of Chip's helicopter was found with Chip nowhere in sight, leading her to pronounce his death. Upon seeing everyone celebrate, he becomes depressed. Still banned from Big City, Chip sneaks back and pretends to be a ghost to scare the Greens, only to find Gloria, who informs him that the Greens moved back to the country. Chip falls further into depression and decides that it's time to reinvent himself and start anew. After thinking of several possible jobs he could take and not being pleased with any of them, he's inspired to just be a normal person so that he can be happy, and changes his name to Norm Alguy. He gets an office job, partakes in various activities, and gets a girlfriend whom he nicknames Babe. He continues living his mundane yet very happy life. After some time, Chip begins to become uncomfortable with his new life and starts to find things to nitpick. An interaction with a Green look-alike family pushes him further into his old habits, though Babe seems blissfully unaware of this. Chip is convinced to return to his old ways, as that was when he was happiest and felt most alive, and completely removes his center tooth. He now uses the Norm alias to spy on the Greens and hides in the sewers as his true self. He told Greg that him and Chip were going to get revenge on all of Big City. He also somehow got a scar over his eye from an unrelated incident involving a rat with a knife. Chip has returned to his old self as Greg watches on in horror. In the most recent episode, at an incredibly early time in the morning, Bill excitedly wakes his family so that they can beat the traffic back to Big City. Cricket is still groggy, Grandma Alice reluctantly cooperates, and Nancy does not have enough time to say anything as she has to get to work on the farm. As Bill is preparing to leave, he suddenly realizes that Tilly's not with them. He finds her sitting up in a tree and asks that she come down, but she refuses, instead insisting on staying up and enjoying the view. Bill becomes agitated as he wants to get back to the city before the traffic gets worse, as it progressively does so throughout the episode. Bill asks Cricket to go up into the tree to get Tilly down, something that he finds bizarre. As Cricket climbs the tree, Tilly convinces him to relax in it, and he finds himself enjoying the sturdiness of the branch. Cricket refuses to come down now, and Bill gets angry. He begs Nancy to go up there and get them, voicing her stress about the work she needs to complete. But Tilly hands her an apple, quenching her hunger, and she relaxes with them. Bill finally calls upon Alice to go and get them, forcing her to use her anger. But when Alice climbs the tree, she's reminded of the smell of her youth and decides to also relax in the tree, leaving Bill furious. He soon discovers the GPS now shows fat chance of making it back before traffic. Having his plans ruined, Bill, finally having had enough of the procrastination, declares that he'll cut the tree down using his car key. But Tilly stops him and tells them that he needs to stop and listen because he's too stressed out, and asks that he simply climb the tree. Bill reluctantly does so, noticing all the things that Cricket, Nancy, and Alice picked up on upon climbing, and reaches the very top with Tilly. He sees the sun rising in the distance and finally understands why the tree is so important. It's the same tree he grew up with in his youth. All the Greens climb to the very top of the tree and witness the sun rise as they sing together, basking in the warm glow. Now I want to tell you about the movie Big City Greens Spacecation, which came out in 2024, and that movie is important for our story. The movie starts with a normal day in the big city, with the narrator introducing the Green family, explaining who they are, what they do, and their daily history, until the narrator is thrown out for being a stalker all morning. The important thing is that the family starts to prepare for the vacation, and each has their own expectations for the trip. Expecting the Cricket vacation to be a real dream trip full of attractions that border on the dangerous, Tilly wants to experience strange things unique to her. Grandma's indifferent because she's Grandma, and Bill wants to make sure the vacation is safe for the sake of his family. While the town learns that the Greens are going on vacation, everyone acts normal. The house is left to Bill's ex-wife Nancy, who is willing to help as long as the family has a safe trip. This does not end well. Bill, who's already prepared for the trip and sees that everyone is excited about the destination and where they're going on vacation, disappoints Cricket because they're going on the same vacation route as last year. This is not a problem for Tilly and Grandma, but it deeply affects Cricket, who wants to experience something new. But before they set off, they need to make a food delivery to the offices of Big Tech, a NASA-style industrial technology company. This company was a regular client of the Greens and regularly bought food from them. And yes, if you're wondering why a tech company needs food, good question, dear viewer. I hope you enjoy the video because I will give you the answer. The answer comes when, at a conference, the Green family unexpectedly walks in, and it's an extraordinary scientist who has devoted all his research to collecting food and creating settlements for humans in space, like the famous space hotels, and inventor Gwendolyn Zapp. At first, all these ideas sounded cool, but even farms located on an asteroid were tended by robots programmed for space gardening. The problem was that to reach and enjoy these facilities, you had to be a millionaire and pay a $1 million fee for the luxury experience. Guess who pays? Remy? Actually, it's not Remy, it's Remy's parents, Cricket's best friend if you don't remember. But Cricket, who wants his vacation to be different, first tries to get into Remy's suitcase to go with him, but is then stopped by his father. Before they arrive on the scene, Zapp's scientists inform him that something is wrong with their robots, but that they are not performing the tasks assigned to them and that they are experiencing technical problems. Seeing the Greens, Gwendolyn is inspired to take them to do their farming work on the asteroid, but Bill refuses at first, preferring his family go on vacation where they had planned. However, after delivering the food and behind his family's back, Cricket convinces Zapp that they would all be willing to go to the asteroid farms as long as they're taken to the space hotel to spend the rest of their vacation for free. The scientist agrees, of course, and Cricket, being Cricket, tricks the family into going to a so-called simulator where they think that they'll go into space, when in reality they'll be on Earth, safe and sound. Both Tilly and Grandma immediately agree, but Bill reluctantly and skeptically, and rightfully so. Arriving at the drop zone, Bill accidentally presses a button that sends him straight into space. Fortunately, he's rescued, and from there we meet the ship's guardian, who knows knows all the ropes and is experienced in space combat and navigation. It's none other than Commander Colin Boyd, who's also Gwendolyn's #1 aide and loyal follower. The commander explains that they're on a mission to harvest vegetables from asteroid farms and that they're not in a simulation, which shocks Bill, who reprimands Cricket for misleading both the family and the big tech staff. But it's too late to return to Earth because Gwendolyn forces the family to stay on the mission by demanding a $2 billion fee to return. So yeah, they literally kidnapped the Green family. I'm not kidding with that. Meanwhile, the commander forces them to follow the rules as trained, but these are Greens, and all they do is cause trouble. Like in the activity room when Tilly gets a new diary, along with a slimy thing she calls Cookie. It has the strange ability to break every glass it touches with a sticky substance instead of cleaning it, so it's basically labeled as a failed experiment. On the other hand, the grandmother, who also gets into trouble, gets a new multifunctional mechanical leg, since the one she had when she arrived on the ship was destroyed because it couldn't withstand the speed. It doesn't take long for the whole family, even Nancy, who tries to lead a normal life looking after the Green household, to become world famous in the news. Coming to Gloria's cafe to rest for a while, Nancy sees her family causing disasters in space. Realizing who sent them there, Nancy confronts Gwendolyn in the big tech offices, where we see the scientists receiving reports that the robots have lost control and have reached a savage stage. Nancy finds out, but it's too early for the scientists to kick her out of the big tech facility and prevent her from doing anything about it to save her family. While all of this is going on, Cricket organizes a little trick with his grandmother to get Colin out of the way, because at this point Colin is being too strict with his ridiculous rules and preventing the family from having the fun they need. They decide to send him to the cryogenic chamber to keep him quiet until the family completes their journey. But Tilly witnesses a crime scene because a person has literally been kidnapped, so Cricket convinces him not to say a word to his father and not to untie the commander until he tells her to. Meanwhile, Cricket puts on a tremendous musical number to cheer Bill up and get him to accept the idea of vacationing in space. Eventually, Bill gives up until he reaches the asteroid belt, or garbage belt as it's called in the show, which blocks the way to the hotel and the asteroid farm. But Bill takes control of the ship and gets used to the controls, gets the ship out of the belt, and arrives alive in the sector where the asteroid and the hotel are located. The ship is full of debris from the journey, but these are minor details. Upon arrival, they manage to see Remy and his family about to board the hotel station, and a tractor beam takes them directly to the facility without any problem. But before they can get to the hotel, the Greens must fulfill the reason they were taken into space, the farm on the asteroid. Meanwhile, Nancy manages to get back to the big tech offices with Gloria's help and confronts Gwendolyn, once again asking her to help her family escape from space, but it's too late, because the robots are now completely hostile due to a bug in the patch they're trying to fix. To make matters worse, the family manages to land on the surface of the asteroid, where they notice a horrible sight with all the crippled machines around. While collecting food from the space farm, they're attacked by robots trying to kill them. Luckily, Granny's super leg comes to their rescue. It sounds weird to say it, but it is. And they manage to create a way out of the farm and escape to the spaceship, where they try to find a solution. But Cricket and Bill start arguing over the deceptions and chaos that Cricket's ideas have caused. At that moment, Commander Void appears, and I'm sure you're wondering how he got out of cryogenics. Apparently, it was solved by Tilly and Granny, because they couldn't handle the situation and needed the help of a professional, which, let's be honest, is futile. Instead of using the emergency escape panel, the commander decides to take the food instead of saving the people living in the spacecraft because he prioritized the mission before their lives. Back on Earth, Nancy and Gloria are upset about the whole thing and decide to confront Gwendolyn, only to be caught red-handed. The villain explains his plan here, and I'll be honest, it's quite simple why this villain is a villain. It all goes back to his childhood when he wanted to show a doodle to a teacher who laughed at him as a child, showing that his dream was to become an astronaut and collect food from space. Yes, it's all because of a drawing. But anyway, let's move on to the movie. But the commander remembers that there's a switch on the ship that allows the killer robots to be deactivated, and that it's located at a remote point of the ship, so it's almost impossible to get there on foot. But impossible is not a word the Greens know. That was pretty epic, wasn't it? They finally managed to hit the van with a rocket, don't ask me how that works, and get to the dome where the whole power base is located. Trouble is, it wasn't going to be that simple, because along the way, Bill fights side by side with Cricket as they fight the robots, so much so that they drive off a cliff and end up crashing into the dome along with the van. Fortunately, Cricket manages to flip the switch to disable all the robots, bless him, but their bad luck is that the switch comes with a side effect that activates the self-destruct mechanism for all the space farms on the asteroid. Gwendolyn tells them that they must cut a certain red wire because as the farms explode one by one, their momentum will push the asteroid into Earth's orbit, the center, where they're located, being the most critical point. If it explodes, it will cause the asteroid to hit the big city in particular. Just as Gwendolyn is about to tell them where the red wire is, Cricket accidentally cuts the transmission cable, thinking it's the right one. While everyone searches for the cable, Cricket and Bill have a serious discussion about Cricket's mistakes. Bill emphasizes to his son that if it weren't for his bad and crazy ideas, they wouldn't be in this situation in the first place. Cricket tells him that he thinks he's a bad son for wanting to make the holidays different and that he doesn't really love him. The situation becomes so tense that they forget about the cable for a while, only to discover it later by chance, thanks to Cricket. But all in vain because the energy center explodes, causing everyone in the family to fly off into space and get separated. When they return to Earth, everyone in the big city panics because the asteroid is about to hit. In an irresponsible move, Gwendolyn decides to rub the success of her space vegetables in the face of her former teacher. After receiving a compliment from him, she feels unsatisfied and decides to fulfill other extraordinary vendettas, choosing to build a new life on Mars and leave Earth at the mercy of the asteroid threat. Fortunately, Gloria and Nancy, together with the teacher, manage to escape from the mad scientist's robotic handcuffs and try to contact the family. But unfortunately, they are so far away that they can no longer detect them, except for the grandmother's robotic leg. After another song between Cricket and Bill, Grandma's robotic leg reaches Cricket, and her mother gives her the courage and motivation to save her family and stop the asteroid. Cricket uses the modified truck to save his family and his father, who is slowly coming to terms with the situation, just like Commander Void, who at this point begins to have an existential crisis when he realizes that Gwendolyn has abandoned them to their fate. But to stop the asteroid, they must use the space hotel's tractor beam to pull it out of orbit. They manage to enter the hotel and see Remy having fun. He explains the whole situation to them and leads them to the control room. At first, Colin has a small moment of reflection and decides to leave his past with the scientists behind to help the Greens enter the control room and use the tractor beam. However, they're spotted by some robot security guards who attack them and destroy part of the tractor beam's navigation panel amidst laser blast. Still, the family manages to enter the control room, but the grandmother's robotic leg is sacrificed on the spot. Hand controls outside the hotel must be used to operate the tractor beam. The commander offers it, but since it's not small enough to fit in the trash compartment, Cricket is the one who activates the beam function and points it directly at the asteroid. However, since the asteroid is moving at high speed, they cannot pull it completely. Cricket has to activate 3 switches that increase the traction capacity of the beam. Meanwhile, Cricket and Bill apologize for fighting while the boy activates the switches. Surprisingly, the trash belt approaches the space hotel, and a pile of garbage is absorbed by the beam and heads straight for where Cricket is standing, shattering the platform and leaving the boy at a disadvantage. But Bill comes up with the craziest idea he can think of to protect his son and help him flip the final switch, using Cookie to destroy the glass of the control panel and a traffic signal to block the garbage. I told you this idea was crazy, didn't I? They managed to knock the asteroid out of Earth's orbit, saving the big city and the whole planet. The problem in the end is that the asteroid is now pointing at the space hotel, so they decide to evacuate everyone who was there while the Green family drives away in their van, the destruction of the hotel behind them, leaving an orbiting asteroid and a mentally unstable doctor who watches as their plans are thwarted. After such an adventure, the Greens decide to start their space vacation by going to the far reaches of the solar system and having a great time with their families. They then resume their quiet life in the big city, and that concludes the story of Big City Greens. But let me remind you again, since this cartoon is still going on, new episodes are still coming. When new episodes arrive, I may make a new video. You can show this by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. See you in the next videos. Goodbye.